Hey, this is Dr. Andrea Geurin, professor of sport business at NYU's Tisch Institute for Global Sport. And this is the Sports Business Conversations podcast from ADC Partners.
It's February 2026, and the Winter Olympic Games in Italy are in full swing. And if you think the competition on the slopes and on the ice is fierce, it's got nothing on the sponsors and advertisers trying to get your attention while you're looking up the latest medal counts. Now, unless you're really close to the games, you might not realize that athletes are highly restricted in what they can do or say to promote their individual sponsors. It's all governed by the IOC's Rule 40, which is designed to protect the game's top sponsors. The rise of social media, though, has forced the IOC to reevaluate how it applies Rule 40, which has created new opportunities for Olympic athletes. To break down these changes, I had a chance to connect with Dr. Andrea Geurin, professor of sports business at NYU's Tisch Institute for Global Sport. Now, Dr. Geurin is an expert in marketing the Olympics and the application of Rule 40. In our conversation, we break down the original intent behind the rule, how it's being modified, and what athletes can do to take advantage of relaxed restrictions. So thanks for listening in on my conversation with Dr. Andrea Geurin, professor of sports business at NYU's Tisch Institute for Global Sport. Hope you enjoy. Dr. Geurin, before we dive into the meat of the conversation, I want to get a little sense of how you came to this field of study about Olympics and Olympic athletes. How did it first get on your radar? And what made you think this is something that I want to dive into for a field of study?
Yeah, so I have been an Olympic fan my entire life. I think the first Olympics I remember watching was 1984.
Okay.
And so it's been like a passion for my entire life. And then when I was an undergrad at Indiana University, I did an internship at USA Track and Field. And then when I did my master's, I was also an intern at USA Gymnastics. And so being around, I guess, in those organizations and really seeing what the reality is for a lot of Olympic athletes, I think so many people have this misconception that Olympic athletes are earning massive salaries, that they're all millionaires.
Yeah,
and
all of them, every last one.
Every single one. And the reality is just so different from that. So when I started doing research and was, working on my PhD, that was around the same time that social media was becoming a thing. It was more than just Facebook for people with a, university account. And so I really saw social media as potentially being kind of more of an equalizer for athletes like those in the Olympic Games who, heavily rely on sponsorships or their family or, working one or two jobs to fund their training and their competitions. And so for me, it was just really interesting to see kind of how was social media being used. And then with Rule 40, which I know we're talking about a lot today, that sort of prohibits athletes from posting about their sponsors during the biggest competition of their lives. So I was really drawn to it. I think just having worked in Olympic sport, having seen the reality of a lot of athletes, and then seeing how social media could actually really help them in terms of their careers.
The Olympics are sort of famously controlling of the images associated with the games. It's obviously notoriously protective of the rings, but also I don't think people really understand how protective they are of the athletes and the images of themselves. So you're seeing social media and that sort of democratization of how people could control their own images and create their own stories and transmit those out on their own behalf really sort of ran up against what you just referenced, Rule 40. So before we dive in, for people who aren't familiar with Rule 40, what is it and how did it kind of become a defining part of the Olympics messaging?
Yeah. So Rule 40, I think we can kind of look at it from two perspectives when we describe what it is.
All right. I'm settling into my chair for the two perspectives. Here we go.
From the IOC's perspective,
Okay.
so the International Olympic Committee, it is an anti-ambush marketing, basically protective mechanism that protects their official sponsors. And for anyone who doesn't know what ambush marketing is, it is a form of marketing where a brand who is not an official sponsor attempts to associate themselves with a large event to capitalize on something like the Olympics or the World Cup or the, NCAA Final Four.
Kind of sneaking on in without the rights to do so.
Yes, exactly. And so Rule 40, it began as a way to prevent that from happening in the Olympics. And then it also, from an athlete's perspective, so that's the second perspective, it really is a rule that prohibits them from fully recognizing their own personal sponsors when they are competing in the Olympic Games. So and again, that's to prevent those personal sponsors from sort of benefiting from that Olympic affiliation. And the IOC, 30% of their revenue comes from what are considered their top sponsors. And they contribute over a 4-year cycle over $2.2 billion.
Yeah,
so they really want to protect those associations.
This is also like for athletes, and we're talking about, this is obviously being recorded during the Winter Olympics, but I think everybody's kind of familiar with the individual athletes, right? The skier comes to the bottom of the hill. The first thing they do is they raise the skis over the top of their heads, and that's it's not so much a celebratory moment. It's clearly celebratory, but it's also to build recognition for the ski company that supported them beginning of this journey. And that kind of stuff does not fly at the Olympics, right? Because to your point, controlling, I think one of the most famous examples of this is like Michael Jordan draping the flag over the Reebok's logo because he was a Nike athlete. It was all this back and forth. And again, the IOC protecting its main sponsors, the people who underwrite your game. To your point, you said, what, 30% of the revenue comes from the sponsors?
Yeah, 30%.
Right. So you're going to protect that, right? So, but it does run into the face of how technology is changing. So changes started to be made, right? So Rule 40 in 2015, and then in 2019, the IOC kind of tweaked the formula a little bit. How did that get started?
So I think there was really kind of a movement from athletes saying, basically, we want to be able to promote our sponsors during the biggest competition of our lives.
Yeah.
We want to be able to thank these companies or these individuals who have helped us get to this point in our careers. And so there was a lot of this athlete pushback. So right before the Rio Olympics in 2016, the IOC changed Rule 40 in a way that allowed athletes to make social media posts with their sponsor's logo, or maybe if it's apparel, they're wearing it. But the restriction was that the posts could not include any of the protected Olympic images. So, the rings, no official uniform. They also could not mention anything about the Olympic Games. And there were a host of protected.
It sounds tortuous, right? Trying to figure out how to do the post.
They couldn't even use the word gold. They couldn't use like gold, silver, bronze in the wording.
Okay.
So it's basically just a generic post.
Yeah.
But it was better than what they've been able to do in the past.
Had it previously just sort of been aligned with the 2 weeks of the games, right? Like during the 2 weeks of the game, or was it all the preceding time as well? They couldn't make any reference to the fact that, oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to the Rio Games coming up.
Yeah, there's a blackout period is what it's commonly known as. And so you've got the Olympic Games, and then it's usually like 7 to 9 days before the games begin, and then a few days after it ends. So that's the protected period. And it's relying on athletes to know that, because otherwise, they are going to slip up and probably violate the rule and not even mean to.
I mean, I think it's safe to say it. I'm not surprising anybody when I say that the IOC is sort of famously litigious over the protection of the rings. Did that extend into Rule 42? Had there been athletes who got afoul of the law, for the rule, for lack of a better term?
So it's really interesting, because I know this kind of goes into how is the rule enforced. There have been a few cases that we can look at where the IOC did kind of say, whoa, we can't have you doing this. And so one of those instances was in 2012, and it was involving Michael Phelps, of all people.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I feel like this didn't I don't know, maybe people have forgotten about it, but at the time, he was featured in a Louis Vuitton ad, and they released it during the 2012 Olympic Games, which he didn't have any control over. I don't think they released it when they were supposed to release it, and it was a violation because they hadn't applied for an exemption. They hadn't applied, with the IOC to be allowed to do this. And so he got kind of a slap on the wrist. Like,
so what does that slap on the wrist look like? Is it a fine? Is it restriction from performance? Was it case by case?
I think it's case by case. Yeah. And the interesting thing is that enforcement is up to each individual National Olympic Committee. In the U.S., the U.S. athletes are essentially policed by the U.S. OPC, the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. And so in the UK, the athletes there are being policed by Sport England or UK Sport. So it's up to each individual country. And I think the interesting part about that is what country actually wants to punish their athletes?
Well, and I'm also assuming you get varying degrees of wrist slapping.
Yes. And also with social media, I've done research where we look at what athletes post during the Olympic Games, and we're talking thousands of posts from just one country, tens of thousands of posts being made. How does a National Olympic Committee even keep up with that?
Yeah, most of them are not fully staffed on a good year, so they're not going to have anybody combing through athletes' social media posts. I'm assuming.
I guess I have one other example where an athlete did. Well, they almost self-policed, but in the 2022 Winter Games, so the last Winter Olympics, there was a U.S. athlete, Julia Marino, who had on the bottom of her snowboard, it was the word Prada, and she was sponsored by Prada. And she made it through one whole competition. I think she won a medal in her first competition, and no one caught this. Underside of the board. And then when the IOC realized that was on her board, they said, "Oh, you can't have that. And so for your next competition, you need to cover it up." Well, and she was like, I can't
cover it up. It's on the bottom of the board.
Yeah, she's like, the bottom of the board is really important. And
maybe you don't understand how this whole snowboarding thing works.
Yeah, exactly. So
was she forced to change gear?
She basically pulled out of the competition. She refused to change the board, couldn't cover it up, and just said, "I'm not competing."
Okay. So, but this leads to the point where, yes, there are still these incidents where athletes are, I don't know, even intentionally pushing the limits or just sort of falling oh my God, I forgot that was on the bottom whiteboard type stuff. There's this opportunity now with the relaxed rules where athletes can be a bit more assertive in recognizing the companies that helped them get to where they are today. Have you seen, now this, like I said, we're recording this during the 2026 Winter Games in Milano Cortina. Have you seen athletes now who are taking advantage of this well, in your perspective, that they're leveraging this new, I don't want to say freedom, because obviously there's still restrictions associated with it, but who are doing a better job than others in maybe showcasing who their partners are?
Yes. Okay. So it's interesting because since the Olympics are still going on, when I do research on this, a lot of times it's after the Olympics because we want to look at everything that has been posted over that time.
We're doing this in real time, Dr. Geurin.
We are doing it in real time. And so I want to just back up quickly in case listeners don't know this, but the current rule allows each National Olympic Committee to basically set their own restrictions on what athletes can and can't post, but they have to follow. No matter what they decide to do, they have to follow certain guidelines from the IOC. So now athletes are allowed to make what are called generic thank you posts to their sponsors. In these posts, so in the US, they allow athletes to make up to 7 total thank you posts over the course of the games. Other countries like Germany has no restrictions. It's athletes, you can be posting a thank you post every minute of every day, and we're fine with that. Yeah. So every country kind of has their own way, but the athletes cannot be in an Olympic uniform. They cannot be on an Olympic venue, so they can't be
no podiums
Yeah,
not outside the skating rink or anything like that.
Yeah, okay. And so And they can't use, obviously, like the Olympic rings, that kind of thing. So it has to be a very generic setting, but they can thank their sponsors. So when we look at kind of what are athletes doing? So one thing that has changed in the U.S. is the USOPC now has an athlete marketing platform where they're offering, I think it's been a very good thing for athletes, but it allows athletes to kind of enter almost like a portal where they can then be considered for sponsorships and partnerships with USOPC sponsors. And
Okay.
they've got,
It's almost like a brokering.
Yeah. And some athletes seem to be doing very well with that. So one athlete that I came across that I think has done a really excellent job of the generic thank you posts and then also kind of the co-branded posts with US OPC sponsors is Jordan Stoltz, who just won the gold medal, I think last night or yesterday in speed skating.
Okay.
in the 1000. And so he's done a great job he clearly has some sponsors who are just his personal sponsors. And he's put together these nice creative thank you posts with beautiful imagery that does not violate the rule. But I feel like it's still very obvious that he's an Olympic athlete and he's, this high level athlete. Then he also has some of these co-branded posts with US Olympic sponsors like Hershey's and Comcast and Honda.
So he's blending the two really well.
And he's also blending it with a little bit of his own original content that he's taken at the Olympic Games that has nothing to do with sponsors. So, yeah.
It's just amazing that I feel like the athletes, as much as they need to perfect their sport, they also have to perfect their communication abilities.
They do. It's bizarre. I think today's athletes, like the young athletes, they don't know anything different. Like they've come up with it, I got really interested in that around the Rio Games, and I did interviews with athletes who were preparing to compete in Rio just to talk about their strategies for using social media. And for a lot of them, it was just second nature. It was like part of the job, part of what they had to do.
They just understood it as a part of what their training is all about, making sure that they are communicating it, tracking it, posting it, and doing all the pieces. It's almost organic to younger athletes now than it is to...
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they
People like
know
me.
about, they track their posts. They know which posts are getting more engagement and, which ones are going to perform better, everything like that.
I mean, it's enough pressure to hone your craft to try to make it to the Olympics. Do you feel like this adaptive to the needs of sponsors on an individual level and making to the Olympics and the pressure to do that, has that changed the nature of what it means to be an athlete from where their priorities lie, or is it just assumed that this is just part of the gig now?
I mean, I think it is assumed that this is part of it. I think it's just part of being an athlete. I think if we compare it to, obviously 20, 30 years ago, no, that was not part of being an athlete.
So you didn't have the ability to do it.
No, there was no way to do it. And so athletes really could just focus on the training, on the competition. And there wasn't all of this kind of creating their own personal brand and, appealing to sponsors and things like that. So it's like these athletes have to be very savvy business people.
You talk about making that personal brand, and that's clearly one of the defining strategies associated with having an effective social media presence that attracts sponsors, that generate revenue, where you have to start thinking about things like Rule 40, because that's what you're going to do. In addition to establishing that brand, are there other takeaways that athletes should be looking at for, if I want to find success with partners, what are some of the examples that I should be doing, including like building that brand and being on my authentic self and things like that? What else have you seen in your research about the effectiveness and what lessons they should take?
So I think partnering, I feel like this is common sense, but partnering with brands that have very similar values to what the athlete has, because if the athlete tries to pretend that they value something that they really don't, eventually that comes out. And I think people can sniff out that it's inauthentic. One thing that I've noticed in my research, because I've done for several Olympic Games, myself and colleagues, we've looked at Rule 40 and kind of our athletes following it, our athletes violating it. And we look at really what they're posting before, during, and after the games. And a missed opportunity that I see with a lot of athletes is when the games are over. That's when a lot of interest in them is at its peak. They've, undoubtedly developed new followers over the course of the Olympic Games. And that's a great time to kind of capitalize on this new audience that they have. And also to, because they've been so restricted in what they can post about personal sponsors during the games, afterwards, when they've developed this greater following, that's a really good time, I think, to highlight their current sponsors. But what we tend to see is, I think athletes, it's like the games are over, they breathe out a sigh of relief, and they just kind of shut off for a while. And so we don't see as much.
So it's almost like they get too focused on messaging during the games that afterwards they're just looking for that break. But that's really where you and your research and your colleagues are saying, like, look, if you're going to strike, that's the time to do it, right? That's when the most attention is being placed there.
Yes. And especially if they've experienced any kind of success, however they define that, whatever that success was, that's also a good time that they might be able to engage new potential partners.
Okay. It seems like Rule 40 has a lot of parallels to what's happening in college sports right now with name, image, likeness, right? You've got, okay, we're making some accommodations at the Olympic level. Clearly, the craziness that's happening in college sports right now. I guess I'm curious what your impression is that this means for just the concept of amateurism. I mean, is it even relevant anymore? I mean, it's so transactional now, and there's so much money being put into it. Where does amateurism even fall now?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
You're
the doctor.
I don't know that the concept of amateurism is even, I don't think it exists anymore. I mean, maybe in high school athletics.
Maybe,
but definitely not in college with the NIL and Olympics. And it's interesting that you bring this up. I teach, right now I'm teaching a class that's all freshmen. And so, they're 18, 19 years old, and they don't know anything. They don't understand amateurism. So I was trying to explain it the other day and explaining how in the past, Olympic athletes had to choose between capitalizing on their success after the Olympics or going to college, but they couldn't do both. And it was just like,
I imagine they must have looked like you were trying to explain what the yellow pages were. Like
oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay,
I don't think they know that term.
No, they're totally baffling. So as you look down the road, right, like we talked about, the Italian games are happening right now. But, just in a blink of an eye, we're going to be in Los Angeles in 2028.
Mm-hmm.
So as this continues to evolve, as you've watched their trajectory, what do you think that period of time is going to look like? I think, like, from an outsider's perspective, it feels like the LA Games. It's interesting that you got interested with the LA Games in '84, because that was really the beginning of the Top Partners program, and where the commercialization of the games really started to take off. And it was like the first profitable games they've had in a while. The games are returning to LA. Rule 40 will still be in place, but probably not in the same format that it has now. So I'm wondering, like, what does that evolution potentially look like to you? Does at some point the IOC just say, it's done, there's no way to police it?
Yeah, honestly, I think at some stage we will reach that point on the athlete side where I think that the IOC will just say, post what you want to post and promote your sponsors. I don't know if we'll be there by LA, but it does seem like at the moment, the athletes, the National Olympic Committees, they're getting better at understanding how to promote sponsors, how to, really capitalize on the athletes' commercial opportunities. So I don't think we'll ever see a scenario where the IOC says to non-sponsoring brands, hey, run an ad campaign during the Olympics and feature all of the athletes. I think that part of Rule 40 will stay pretty much in place because it really hasn't changed much over the years. But on that athlete side, I do think we will see greater, freedom to post what they want to talk about and what they want to highlight.
Okay. I'm with Dr. Andrea Geurin. She is the professor of sports business at NYU's Tisch Institute for Global Sport. Dr. Geurin, thanks so much for the time. But before I let you go, I'm going to put you into the lightning round. I've got a series of questions for you. You just...
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, that's the appropriate reaction. Yeah, that is it. So are you ready? You're ready as you're going to be, right?
Okay,
yes. Let's do this thing. You are a triple Hoosier. You got your BA, your MS, your Master of Science, and your PhD. So did you celebrate the Hoosiers football championship 3 times as much as everybody else?
Oh, yes, I did. I was like the ultimate super Hoosier. I got
Face
online.
paint?
No face paint, but I did reteach myself all of the cheerleading moves to the school song, and I did those. And my friends were singing the song, playing the song, so I could do the moves.
I'm
I got
sure.
online the next day. I ordered 4 pieces of merchandise with national champions on it. If I didn't have this background, you would see a banner behind me. So yeah, it was just the best thing ever.
Okay. For those who are only listening on audio right now, there's a level of excitement that's going on regarding the Future Dice. So congratulations there. You list Spanish club among your activities when you attended Mount Vernon High School. How was your fluency during the Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime show?
Muy mal. Very bad.
Oh, see? Que bueno. All right. Very good. All right. So,
yeah, my old Spanish teacher would be very proud of me right now.
yes, I'm sure they're listening. What would be the Winter Olympic sport that you competed in?
Ooh, you know what? Someone asked me this the other day. I think it would be figure skating.
Oh, okay. Because you're a gymnast, so I'm assuming it would sort of carry over to a certain degree.
Yeah, I used to love figure skating as a kid. I never took lessons, but I would just go to the rink and play, and I would do spins, and I would do all kinds of things. I was kind of fearless.
Kind of a natural.
I feel like I would have been okay.
Well, if this professorship thing doesn't work out, maybe there's a return there. According to your bio, you've been to 34 countries. Which one do you wish you had avoided?
Ooh. My gosh,
A stumper.
I don't know.
All right, we'll have to take a pass on that one.
I've got to take a pass because I genuinely enjoyed every country.
There's an aspect of enjoyment for all of them.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So, very good.
Something
All the countries are good.
Experience.
Last one, you label yourself as a wine enthusiast, and I live in Sonoma County, California. Which winery would you like me to visit on your behalf?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. Now I have to think about this.
We're ending with a thoughtful one.
You really are. I'm looking at my wine rack over to the side.
In the office.
Well, I'm at home right now.
Well, I want to see how the office is tricked out nicely.
You know what? There's a winery called Roche, Roche.
Yep.
And I like their wines, and I feel like they've managed to stay affordable.
All right.
Over the years. They haven't gone crazy, and so yeah.
All right. I'll send you a photograph from the Roche Winery sampling their fine wares on your behalf. Dr. Andrea Geurin of the NYU Tisch Institute for Global Sport. Many thanks for the time.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sports Business Conversations podcast. If you enjoyed it, we always appreciate a subscribe, share, comment, or like. And if you're the social type, you can always follow us in all the usual places. Don't forget, past episodes are located at adcpartners.com/podcast. A quick shout out to Scott Holmes for composing our theme music. This podcast is a production of ADC Partners. All rights are reserved.